I made a snowman with my son the other day. It was a little overboard on my part, maybe. I've only made a couple in my life, and every time, I would just throw together a sad-looking pile of snow with sticks for arms. Not this time. This time, I wanted to go all out. My son is finally old enough to help me, and this will be the first one we built together. We planned it out and even went shopping for a few supplies. I already had carrots at home, but they were too small. So, all in all, my son and I bought a single large carrot, a green and red Christmas scarf, and a straw hat with a black band around it. I figured we could break up some charcoal from the fire pit at home and scavenge sticks for the other features. We got to work on them as soon as we got home. I showed my son how to roll a snowball around to make it grow, and how to avoid leaves and other things to keep it clean. By the time I had the snowman's base done, my son had a pretty decent head-sized snowball. The base that I made was an almost perfectly round snowball that came up right past my knees. I pushed it towards the other side of the house, and when it was in place, I packed snow around the bottom to keep it from moving. The head that my son made was a little less than perfectly round. A little football-shaped, actually. But not too bad. I place it next to the base and tell my son that I'm going to make the snowman's torso next. He watches me make this one. Another perfectly round snowball. This one about half the size of the base. I look at my son and say, "All right, it's time to put him together." I lift the torso from the ground, and my son puts his hands on it, not really helping lift or guide, just touching it while I place it on the base. I pick up snow and pack it around where the two pieces meet. "I want to put the head on," my son says. He grabs the head and I grab him, lifting him to the top of the snowman's torso. He places the snowman's head on top and starts clapping his hands. I tell him good job, and after I straighten it up slightly, I pack more snow where the head meets the torso. We stand back and admire our work for a moment, then begin on the accessories. My son wanted to start with the carrot nose, so I lifted him with one arm and placed my other hand on the back of the snowman's head for support. My son pokes the carrot in place. It's a little crooked, but it'll work. Let's finish the face next. We grab a few more pieces of new charcoal from the fire pit, and I lift my son back up. He places 2 eyes above the carrot, and then 6 or so chunks of coal in the shape of a smile under it. "He looks scary," my son says. He did look scary. My son pushed the coal in a little too far for the eyes, so they had a bit of a sunken, shadowy look. And the mouth was small and a little too close to the nose. "He probably just needs his clothes on," I tell my son, and we walk over to grab the scarf and hat. "We also need his arms." We walk back and I lift my son up to the snowman. He wraps the scarf around the snowman's neck and flops the hat on his head. I put my son down, grab 4 large pieces of charcoal, and place them in a vertical row down the snowman's chest. "Oh, all that's left is his arms. Help me find 2 large sticks." My son and I start looking around for sticks, and we find 2 good ones pretty quickly. We make our way to the snowman to put them in place. I hand my son one of the sticks, and tell him to put it in his side at the same time that I put mine in. I count down from 3, and we both push the snowman's arms in place. My son suddenly winces and grabs one hand with the other. "Did you get hurt?" I ask, and he shows me his hand where he was holding the stick. His hand had slipped past a raised point on the stick and it cut him. I picked him up to inspect it. Oh no, it cut you. There's just a little blood. Nothing we can't fix. My son points at the snowman and says, I didn't get my arm in all the way. I walk over and grab the stick my son couldn't push in. And at the same time, my son grabs it too with his cut hand. Oh no, don't touch that with your cut. You'll get germs in it. I push the stick in and grab my son's hand. Ew, you got your blood on the snowman's hand now. I showed my son where he grabbed the stick and left a red smear on it. Let's go inside and clean your hand up. We make our way inside and into the bathroom. And as I'm cleaning my son's hand, he says, Dad, we need to clean the snowman's hand too. I tell him that's a good idea. And once he's cleaned up, we grab a wet rag and head out to the snowman. My son runs ahead of me, dragging his feet in the snow as he goes. When he reaches the snowman, he looks up at its face. He stares at the snowman with a confused look. I finally get there, and my son points up at the snowman's face. Look at his mouth, my son says with his finger still pointed. When I glance up, my blood runs cold. I get intense chills and can't help but stare at the snowman's face. The snow around the mouth of the snowman was tinted red slightly. Not only that, but it looked like the expression on the snowman's face changed. It was still smiling. The eyes were still sunken in. But now, there were slanted, angry-looking, eyebrow-like lines scratched into the face. And the smile looked a little more acute. He had almost a satisfied look. I glanced at the snowman's arm where my son cut his hand. There was a little snow in that spot, but no blood that I could see. I hear my son start to ask me something, but I grab his arm before he gets it out, and I start pulling him inside. Let's go inside. I don't know what's going on, if someone is playing a prank on us or whatever, but I am officially freaked out. We get back inside and look out the front window at the snowman. We built it facing the street, so we get the back view from this point. We stayed at that window looking out for what felt like hours. Occasionally, we would see the scarf blow in the wind, but other than that, we saw nothing. I think someone's playing a joke on us. I tell my son, we need to get you ready to go to your mommy's house. We have to be there soon. I get my son's belongings together and we head out to my truck. After I strap him in the booster seat, I turn and look at the snowman once more. His face still had that scary, satisfied expression, and there was still a red stain around his mouth. I walk over to the snowman and look around at all my neighbors' houses. There's too many footprints in the snow to really tell if anyone came over and messed with our snowman. I bend down and pick up a handful of snow. I pack it around the coals that make up the mouth, effectively covering up any red tint that I see. There, good as new. I walk back to my truck and take my son to his mom's for the night. We have joint custody, and throughout the week, we alternate every other day with him. On my way home, all I could think about was that snowman. And when my house came into view, that was the first thing I looked for. It was still there. I don't know why I had a feeling it would be gone. I'm just psyching myself out. I pull my truck in the driveway, park it, and then go inside. My house is quiet when my son is at his mom's. I turn on the TV and sit on the couch. Periodically, I glance out of the window where the snowman would be. But it's too dark outside to see anything. I stay on the couch for a while, but eventually, I get uncomfortable not being able to see that snowman through the window. So, I get up and walk to the front door. I turn the outside porch light on, and it illuminates my entire front yard. There you are, you creepy little snowman. It was in the same spot, looking towards the street. I go back to the couch, and now with every glance, I can see the snowman. That puts me at ease, enough to doze off to sleep. I wake up to an excruciating sound. Abrupt dings and whistles seemingly playing directly in my ears. It was my alarm clock app on my phone, waking me up for work. I guess I fell asleep with my phone right by my head. I stretch and grab the remote for the TV. It's still on, but it's only showing a black screen with a "continue watching" prompt on it. I hit the power button on the remote and glance towards the window where the snowman is. I can't see through the window though. There's a buildup of snow on the window screen outside, as if someone threw snowballs at it last night. The more I look at it, the more I can make out that the snow on the screen looks like it was smeared on rather than thrown on, as if someone took a snowball and wiped it all over the window. Someone was on my porch. There's no way snow got to that window like that, unless it was snowing sideways last night. I stand up and walk to the window. I try to find a spot to see through, and when I do, I can't see any apparent signs of a snowstorm happening last night. My car is still clear from any snowfall, and there are still tracks in the snow all over my yard. Except, now that I look a little harder, all of the footprint tracks that my son and I made yesterday are all covered up by larger, continuous tracks, like someone was driving their vehicle in my yard. I unlock and open my front door. The freezing air rushes in, and I step out onto my front porch. My bare feet step on snow, and I look down. My porch is covered in snow. Not like it snowed last night. It doesn't usually make it to my porch anyway. But like someone was grabbing snow from my yard and dropping it on my porch, then rolled a beach ball or something around in it. I look back at my front door, and it's covered in snow, in the same fashion as my window. I look at my other front window in my house, and it's also covered in snow. What is going on? I get a stinging feeling that runs down my spine. I remember the snowman that I built yesterday. It's gone. It's not in the spot we built him in, and there's no sign of him. I run back inside and start getting dressed in warmer clothes, the whole time thinking about possible explanations to this. Did a bunch of kids come knock down my snowman? Did they smear him all over my house and porch? What were they riding on to make those tracks? Are they the same ones that made it look like the snowman ate my son's blood yesterday? The image of the snowman's bloody face flashed in my mind. It makes me sick to think some people would make such morbid jokes. Once I'm dressed, I head back outside. I walk to the edge of the porch with my attention fixated where the snowman should be. I reach the driveway where it meets the porch and look down. The weird tracks go towards my backyard. I follow them to the back and assess the area. I can't believe it. I see the tracks go into my backyard and go along the back of my house to every window. Each window is covered in snow, the same way as the front windows. The tracks go from the last window across my backyard to my tool shed. My shed door is broken, and I can see snow everywhere inside it from where I am. I call 911 immediately. I go back inside my house and wait for the cops. Once there, I explain the situation to them. They ask if anything was taken, and I tell them that I didn't look in my tool shed yet. I wanted to wait for them first. We make our way back to the shed, and after the officers check for anyone who may still be in there, we start clearing the snow out. Once it was mostly clear, I start checking my tools for anything missing. Most of my tools are here, but they did take some. I'm missing all of my hammers. I had about 6 or 7 of them, and they're all gone. My saw is missing, and it looks like some wire cutters. None of my expensive equipment is missing. The cops get all the information and tell me they'll make a report, but there's not much else they could do. They tell me to keep all of my doors and windows locked at night, and that they're only a couple blocks away if I call them. I thank them and they leave. I call my boss and tell him my tool shed was broken into, and I need the day off to clean up. Then I text my ex and tell her that I may need her to keep our son tonight, so I can figure out what's going on. She writes back and tells me she has important plans, and she'll be at my house around the normal time. I grab a broom and start wiping the snow from the windows and the door on my house. I exchange the broom for a shovel and clear my porch and the tracks on my driveway. The only thing I can do for my shed is tie it closed with some rope for now. I'll have to replace the doors and hardware this weekend. Once everything is cleaned up, I spend the rest of the time before my son gets there, looking over my fence to the neighbors' backyards, across the street and around the block, for any sign of my snowman's hat and scarf. I didn't find anything. When my son got there, of course the first thing he asked was where the snowman went. I say, he was too scary looking, and I had to get rid of him before I could go to sleep. He asked me if we could make another one that looks nicer, and I told him I don't want to spend another moment in the snow today, but maybe next time. We ended up building a fort out of blankets, and then watched a few movies. He fell asleep on the 3rd or 4th one. I was dozing off a little myself. When I realized he was sleeping, I turned the TV off and carried him to his room. I put him in bed and covered him up. Then I looked out his window towards the front of the house. I saw my yard lit up by the porch light. I stared through the window for a while in the area where the snowman used to be, then closed the blinds and left my son's room. I crossed the hall and laid in my bed after placing my phone on the charger. I was asleep in no time. I woke up to a blinding light from the sun shining through my window in what felt like only a second later. It's daylight already? Why didn't my alarm wake me up? I reach my arm from under the covers to try and locate my phone. It's freezing in my room. Did I leave a window open or something? My mind is groggy from just waking up, but I find my phone and try to check the time. It's dead. How is my phone dead? Wasn't it on the charger still? I unplug and plug my charger back in a few times, and track the wire to the wall outlet. It's still plugged in. I must have lost power last night. I need to check on my son. He's probably freezing. I get out of bed and grab my robe. I walk to the door to my room. I don't remember closing this last night. I grab the handle to the door and pull. It opens very slightly, and then stops. What's it stuck on? I looked down, and it looked like snow was packed under my door from the other side. I pull harder, and the door opens with resistance. Freezing air pours in. I see a layer of snow covering my hallway floor. What is going on? I step out of my room into the freezing snow with my bare feet and look at my son's room. The door is closed. I run over to it and try to push it open. The handle turns, but the door won't budge. There's something on the other side blocking it. I yell my son's name, and I hear nothing. Oh no. I run down the hall to the living room and find a hammer laying on the floor in front of my window, with broken glass around it. I looked at the other living room window and it was also broken, with another hammer of mine from the tool shed on the floor by it. I run to the front door, unlock it, and run outside to my son's bedroom window. It was broken. I try to look through it without touching any of the glass shards. My son's room was filled with a foot of snow. There was no way I'd be able to open the bedroom door. I yell his name again through the window. No response. I ran towards the backyard to grab a ladder and a metal pipe from the tool shed. When I got to my backyard, I saw that the electrical lines to my house had been cut, and my wire cutters were laying in my yard. I continued to my shed and grabbed the supplies. I raced back to my son's window and placed the ladder on the house beside it. I used the pipe to break away the rest of the glass, rip his blinds out, and then start climbing the ladder. I use about 3 steps before I can jump through the window and into my son's room. The snow in there was deep, and I dug through every inch of it, screaming my son's name the whole time. Eventually, the neighbors called the cops, and they pulled me out of that room. I tried to explain everything to them between sobs, and they make a missing persons report for my son. The community came together, and we looked for my son for weeks, non-stop. We never found him, despite our best efforts. This afternoon, a deputy from the local sheriff's office called me with questions about a similar case that happened to a family a couple of blocks away from me. It was another missing child case. The police found 3 more hammers from my tool shed, along with other items thrown through every window in the house, except the parents' bedroom window. The power lines were cut, and there was snow covering the floors of the house. When they cleaned out the snow, they found a green and red Christmas scarf shoved underneath the kid's bedroom door. The same kind of scarf that I bought for that snowman.